This show is part of OnePlace, a daily network of focused briefings across the stories people follow most.
Welcome to today's Roundup. We're diving into the latest health and science news, from debunking dieting myths to understanding the hidden chemical signals in our brains that drive anxiety and physical endurance.
New research suggests yo-yo dieting isn't actually harmful.
Chronic stress may permanently damage your immune system.
Ebola is declared a global emergency in Congo.
Brain cells stay active long after your workout.
Low choline levels are now linked to anxiety.
A rare Ebola strain spreads through African cities.
Family holiday demands can lead to deep resentment.
Stronger hand grip strength predicts lower lifetime depression risk.
First, the dieting myth. For decades, the concept of yo-yo dieting or weight cycling has been treated as a metabolic disaster. The common fear is that losing and regaining weight wrecks your metabolism, causes permanent muscle loss, and leaves you worse off than if you had never tried to diet at all. However, a major new review published in The Lancet Diabetes and Endocrinology suggests these fears are largely unsupported by science. Researchers from the University of Copenhagen and the German Center for Diabetes Research analyzed decades of data from both humans and animals. They found no convincing evidence that the act of weight cycling itself causes long-term physiological harm or makes future weight loss more difficult for people with obesity.
This is a huge relief for anyone who has struggled with the scale. Professor Phaidon Makos noted that many people are actually discouraged from even trying to lose weight because they're afraid of the potential damage if they fail to keep it off. The study clarifies that while regaining weight obviously erases the health improvements you gained during the loss phase, it doesn't typically leave your body in a worse state than your original baseline. The researchers looked at body composition, blood sugar control, and metabolic rates, finding that the benefits of attempting weight loss far outweigh the theoretical risks of cycling. It's a call to keep trying, rather than fearing the process of change.
Next, let's discuss stress. We all know that feeling of a racing heart and shallow breathing when we're running late or dealing with a difficult email. That's the immediate surge of adrenaline and cortisol designed for survival. Professor Kavita Vedara explains that this fight-or-flight response was perfect for dodging mammoths, but it's poorly suited for modern life, where the threat is often just a mean comment on social media. The real danger arises when these systems never turn off. When your body is constantly diverting resources to deal with perceived threats, it's pulling those resources away from vital rest and digest functions, like digestion, tissue repair, and the immune system. If you stay in this state chronically, your body never gets the chance to catch up on maintenance.
The long-term consequences of this resource diversion are significant. Chronic stress is now directly linked to poorer immune function, which means you're more susceptible to infections, vaccines become less effective, and wounds take longer to heal. Beyond the immune system, the constant presence of stress hormones can increase the risk of obesity and cardiovascular issues. Because our brains can ruminate on an argument for hours or days, we keep the biological alarm bells ringing long after the actual event has passed. This constant state of high alert prevents the body from performing the basic biological housekeeping necessary for long-term health. It's a reminder that managing our mental state is a physical necessity, not just a luxury for our mood.
Now to the Congo. The World Health Organization has officially declared a new Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo as a public health emergency of international concern. The outbreak originated in the eastern Ituri province and has already seen hundreds of suspected cases. What makes this particularly concerning is that the virus has already crossed borders, with a Congolese man recently dying from the virus in Kampala, Uganda. WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus clarified that while this is a serious international emergency, it does not yet meet the criteria for a pandemic. However, the lack of a vaccine for this specific strain and the high transmissibility through bodily fluids have put health officials on high alert across the entire African continent.
The logistics of containing this are incredibly difficult. The outbreak is centered in mining towns where there is a high volume of transient workers moving between regions. Dr. Jean Kaseya of the Africa CDC highlighted a specific case where an infected individual used public transportation to travel to Uganda before passing away. This creates a massive challenge for contact tracing. Furthermore, there is a critical shortage of personal protective equipment in the region. Health workers are being advised to use full gear, including goggles and rubber boots, but the lack of local manufacturing for these supplies is a major hurdle. The international community is being urged to provide funds and resources to prevent this from spiraling into a much larger regional crisis.
Next, exercise and brains. We usually think of exercise as a way to train our muscles, but new research from Cell Press suggests it's actually training our brains just as much. Scientists discovered that a specific set of neurons in the ventromedial hypothalamus, known as SF1 neurons, become highly active during exercise and stay active for at least an hour after the workout ends. These neurons are responsible for regulating how the body manages energy and blood sugar. In studies with mice, researchers found that these lingering signals are actually the key to building endurance. It's not just about the physical strain on the legs. It's about the brain's ability to signal the heart and muscles to adapt and become stronger over a period of consistent training.
The most fascinating part of this study was what happened when they blocked those specific brain cells. Even when the mice continued to exercise normally, they failed to gain any stamina or endurance if those SF1 neurons were silenced. This suggests that the brain is the primary driver of physical improvement. Without these post-workout neural signals, the body doesn't seem to get the message that it needs to adapt for the next session. This might explain why some people feel a mental clarity after a run. Your brain is literally in a heightened state of activity, processing the physical stress and preparing the body for future challenges. It redefines fitness as a neurological achievement as much as a physical one.
Moving to brain chemistry. Researchers at UC Davis Health have identified a striking chemical pattern in the brains of people with anxiety disorders. A large-scale analysis of brain scans revealed that individuals with anxiety have significantly lower levels of choline, an essential nutrient. This deficit was most pronounced in the prefrontal cortex, which is the area of the brain responsible for emotional regulation, decision-making, and thought control. Choline is vital for maintaining cell membranes and supporting nerve signaling, yet many people don't get enough of it through their diet. This discovery is groundbreaking because it provides a measurable, chemical marker for anxiety that spans across several different clinical diagnoses, offering a more objective way to understand the condition beyond just self-reported symptoms.
This finding opens up the possibility of using nutritional interventions to treat mental health. Assistant Professor Jason Smuxney suggests that appropriate choline supplementation could potentially help restore brain chemistry and improve outcomes for patients struggling with anxiety. While the body can produce a small amount of choline, the vast majority must come from food sources like eggs, meat, and certain vegetables. The fact that people with anxiety showed about an 8% lower level of this nutrient suggests that a simple dietary gap could be fueling complex emotional struggles. It's the first time a meta-analysis has shown such a consistent chemical pattern, and it could lead to a shift in how we approach anxiety treatment, moving toward a more holistic, nutrient-focused strategy.
Back to Ebola details. The urgency of the WHO's declaration regarding the Ebola outbreak in the Congo is underscored by the specific strain involved, the Bundibugyo species. This is a rare strain with very little documented history, meaning health officials have far less experience managing it compared to the more common Zaire strain. Currently, there are no licensed vaccines or therapeutics available for Bundibugyo, which significantly increases the risk. The outbreak has already reached major urban centers like Kinshasa and Kampala, which is a nightmare scenario for infectious disease experts. The speed of the WHO's emergency issuance, coming just days after the first confirmed cases, reflects a deep fear that authorities are already trailing behind the virus's spread in these densely populated areas.
The situation is further complicated by the ongoing conflict in the Ituri province, which makes medical intervention and monitoring extremely dangerous and difficult. At least 4 healthcare workers have already died, which is a clear indicator of gaps in infection prevention protocols within local clinics. The WHO has warned that the current numbers likely represent only a fraction of the actual cases, suggesting a much larger undetected outbreak is already underway. Because people in this region move frequently across borders for work and trade, the risk of regional spread is considered very high. The emergency declaration is intended to trigger international cooperation and funding, but the combination of a rare strain and regional instability makes this a particularly volatile health threat.
Now, family dynamics. A common but painful family dilemma has surfaced in a recent advice column, highlighting the emotional toll of unequal caregiving. A woman shared her struggle with being the sole sibling responsible for taking her elderly mother on holidays, despite having 4 other siblings. The situation is exacerbated by a sense of deep unfairness. Her mother has historically favored her eldest brother, providing him with financial help and childcare while refusing to help the daughter. Now, as the mother demands an expensive trip abroad for a milestone birthday, the daughter feels trapped between her desire to be kind and the realization that her siblings are calling her a fool for caving to these demands. It's a classic case of the responsible child being exploited by the rest of the family.
Psychotherapists point out that this isn't just a holiday dispute. It's a reflection of deep-seated family roles and societal expectations often placed on daughters. The daughter acts as the bridge that prevents a total family schism, but she does so at her own financial and emotional expense. Experts suggest that while being generous is a wonderful trait, it must be paired with firm boundaries to prevent resentment. The brother's comment about her being a fool is particularly cutting because it lacks any gratitude for the work she is doing to care for their shared parent. The advice given is to recognize her own agency. She is making a choice to be there, but she also has the right to step back if the burden becomes unsustainable or unfair.
Finally, grip strength. It turns out that how hard you can squeeze a handheld device might say a lot about your mental health. A massive study involving nearly 500,000 people found that adults with lower hand grip strength have a significantly higher risk of developing depression later in life. While it seems like a simple physical metric, hand grip strength is actually a highly reliable indicator of overall muscular capacity and the health of the central nervous system. To generate force, the brain must send powerful electrical signals to the limbs. Therefore, a decline in strength often reflects deeper physiological changes in the brain and nervous system rather than just a loss of muscle tissue. This makes the grip test a surprisingly effective window into a person's biological resilience.
The link between physical strength and mental health may be rooted in the brain's structure. Research has shown that people with higher physical strength tend to have larger volumes in the hippocampus, which is the region of the brain responsible for memory and emotional regulation. This suggests that maintaining muscle mass and strength as we age provides a protective effect for the nervous system. Since depression affects nearly 4% of the global population and often co-occurs with physical ailments, finding such an easy-to-measure marker is a major win for preventative medicine. It suggests that strength training isn't just about looking good or staying mobile. It's a fundamental part of maintaining the neurological health required to ward off chronic mental health conditions.
That's our roundup for today. Thanks for joining us for these essential updates. We'll be back tomorrow with more stories that matter to your daily life.